said something to me that's kind of funny. He said, you know, David, I sometimes just miss talking to Dad. What's funny about that is he and my dad never got along. They fought all the time, and I was at home. He was at home. But he had that on his mind, like he took talk to Dad. Well, my dad was better. And this last week I was watching a program, and it mentioned the name Callaloo. My dad, by the time he was 22 years old, which was the age of my grandson's 22 years old, my dad had made 2 beach landings, one on Callaloo and one on Lady. And I thought about that, and I thought about the fact my brother and my dad didn't get along. I think partly because the price of war, my dad didn't see him until he was 3 years old, because Mom expected him when he shipped out to the Philippines, and didn't see him until he got back from the Philippines. So my brother tells this story remembering Dad's first night at home. He rolled over to his mom and said, "Mom, who's this guy in bed with us?" "That's your dad." That's your dad. Hadn't seen him for 3 years. My brother had never seen him. The price of war. And Memorial Day actually began, I think, about 1868. In 1868, a group of ladies got together and formed a society with the idea that they would decorate the graves of Civil War soldiers, Union soldiers actually. And so they did that for a while, and then they decided they should decorate all Civil War graves. So then they did decorate the Union and the Confederate soldiers' graves. And in 1971, it's not too long ago, the United States recognized Memorial Day as a national holiday. So it's not been that long ago it was a national holiday. And but something happened on Memorial Day, and we mainly recognize our veterans on Veterans Day, which is in November. You might remember last 2 years we've had a dinner for all the veterans in our church. We'll probably do that again this year in November. But Memorial Day or Decoration Day, you started to evolve at some point. It became a time of not just recognizing those who had died in the war, but recognizing all those who had passed away, all loved ones. In fact, I'm going to ask this question. Have you ever gone back home for a Decoration Day where you went to the cemetery and cleaned up the grave and had dinner? Anybody ever done that? Yeah, there's some. How about that? There are several of the first services that have done that. It used to be real popular. A lot of people here came from Arkansas, Missouri, to go back home and to go to those small cemeteries. They would clean those graves up, and they'd have music, they'd serve dinner. In fact, I was reading somewhere that the expression, "all they seem to get on the ground," comes from that transformation from recognizing veterans to recognizing all who have deceased, because so many churches and so many people did that. So all day seeing dinner on the ground became part of the expression of getting together with family and friends to clean up cemeteries, eat a little fried chicken, have some music. Not a bad idea. So it kind of evolved to that. So what we do in our church is we recognize our veterans in November. On Memorial Day, we preach a sermon designed to touch all those who have lost loved ones. We'll do that this evening. I'm going to begin my sermon by sharing a story with you that I have shared before. So I'm not going to tell the whole story, but it fits today into our message. Several years ago, I had just been promoted to be the pastor of the church, but I was still in charge of going to children's church there at Kaimishi. Some of the best days of my life were spent at Kaimishi with children. We take between 60 and 90 every year. It was a lot of fun. And so I got a message from home that I needed to call home. Well, I had 1 or 2 kids with me, but I had one or two that were still at home with Joyce. And I thought, well, what have they done now? So that evening at the service, I had to wait in line to get a telephone because they didn't have cell phones. They had a big phone bank with like 5 or 6 pay phones. You'd go up and down the operator and collect home. I called home, and Joyce didn't sound stressed when I talked to her, but we talked about these things, and before I hung up, I got to think, she's got something to tell me that she is not telling me. So finally she said, "I need to tell you something, Dave, before you get home." I said, "Okay, what is it?" "I forged your name and bought a house." And I'll tell you about when you get home. I said, wait. That's not wait till I get home. Now, what did you do? I forged your name and bought a house. And we've been looking for a house for a while and wasn't making a lot of money, although the church was generous with our salary. We didn't have a lot of money. We had 4 kids. So it's kind of limited to how big of a house we could make or could buy. And so I said, well, tell me about it. And she said, well, it's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It's got a really large living area. And she said, and best yet, I don't think so now, but then she said, best yet, it's got 1.5 acres for the kids to play on. That's such a good deal now. And I said, well, okay. I said, well, I'll see when I get home. She said, well, if you got any questions, ask your dad. I had your dad come over. My dad's a construction worker. And said, he looked at the foundation. There's no cracks in the brick or the rock. And he said, it looked like it's sounding. So you call your dad and ask your dad for another opinion. I said, okay, when I get home, I'll see it. And try as she will to describe to me what that house looked like. I could not visualize what that house looked like. She said, David, it's everything that we're looking for, and I think more. So I get home, and she picks me up. She said, what are you going to do first? I said, well, let's go look at that house you bought. He said, okay. So we drove over there, we pulled up the parking lot, large lot, nice house. I said, well, let's go inside. So she took me inside, opened the door, I looked in there, and I thought, and I said, this is more than we hoped for. She said, you're right. It had some smoke damage, and they'd come in, the bank handed a repo, and they had put brand new carpet and painted the walls. It was just beautiful on the inside, and she said, we're going to be happy here. And I said, yeah, we probably will be. I looked out that back door of the house, and you could see the Charlie Mountains here south of town through my back door. And I thought, man, this is just perfect. Perfect for us. And I thought how hard it was for her to even try to describe to me that house. Just imagine what it's like if you had not actually seen heaven, but trying to describe heaven. Here's what I think is going to happen. We will not fully grasp the beauty and the majesty and the greatness of heaven until we go home. When we go home, when we pull in the driveway of heaven, we'll be so impressed. When they open those pearly gates and we look inside and we see what it looks like on the inside, we're going to be in awe. We're going to think, well, it was more than I had expected. That's going to be our response to what we're going to see on the inside. I don't know why Jesus did this, but when he talks about heaven, a place prepared for disciples, he never tries to describe that place itself. He leaves that to the people. He leaves that to John, for instance. John, in Revelation, talks about the streets of gold and the pearly gates and the jewels and the walls and the river that runs down through heaven and the tree of life be on both sides of the river. And yet, I think this, although John had a vision, I don't think John could accurately describe what heaven looked like. See, I think what happens is we see something great, and so we use the superlatives of the greatest things we can think of to try to describe what something is. Are there streets of gold in heaven? There might be, or it might be something more precious than gold. Are there pearly gates? Well, they might be, but it might be something more precious than pearls. You see, we haven't seen the greatness of God yet. We get a hint of the greatness of God, but we've not really seen the greatness of God, all that he can create. I like what R.G. Lee said. R.G. Lee was a famous pastor of Bellevue. He said, heaven is the greatest place the mind of God can conceive and the hand of God can create. Think about that. How great is heaven? The mind of God could conceive it and the hands of God could create it or make it. The Bible says, eye have not seen, ear have not heard, neither has entered in the hearts of men the thing that God has prepared for those who love him. Here's what I believe about heaven. We will not be disappointed. When we get home, we go there, we will not be disappointed. What Jesus does do, he does make a promise promised to his disciples would come at a very important time in their lives. And later he inspired other writers to write some things that are important about heaven. So that's what I want to dwell on today. We find that 14th chapter that Jesus has already had a vibrant ministry, and it's coming down to the end. He could tell the end was near. He could tell his destiny was just around the corner. And he knew that the trauma was going to be on his disciples. So what's he going to do for them? He's going to assure them that they have a future. I want to assure you today, regardless of what you're going through right now, you may be here today, you may have cancer, you may have fibrosis of the lung, you may have diabetes so bad that's eating you up. Regardless of, your future is bright. You have a future. He wants to tell them, you know, things are going to get tough, but you have a future. I would say to every believer who one day will face tough times, and many of you will face tough times if you're not already, that you have a future, and your future is good. Your future is good. So let me read this to you as he speaks to his disciples on the eve of his being betrayed and being on trial and going to the cross. He says this, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places, or many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you so. Where I go, prepare a place for you. And if I go prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." I go to prepare a place for you. Heaven has been described this way. It is a prepared place for prepared people. It's only for those people who have prepared for that place. Now, his disciples didn't have the full revelation of what God was going to do through Christ. They didn't know, but they had done enough that he could look at them and promise them that he was going to prepare a place for them, and where he was, they would be also. How did you prepare for a place like heaven? How did they prepare for it? Well, first of all, they prepared for it through faith, through their belief in Jesus. You remember that wonderful scene where Jesus had been doing miracles, preaching, and people have gathered around him. But at some point, the focus of his ministry changes. It gets to be hard to listen to. The demands he was putting on them probably got to be hard to listen to. There is a point in your pilgrimage as a believer that God's expectations of you is elevated, becomes hard. And they begin to fall away. And Jesus is standing there watching people as they walk away. And he says to his disciples, "Will you leave also? Will you leave also?" And Peter steps up and says, "Well, where should we go? Only you have the words of life." Where should we go? Where are we going to go? Only you have the words of life. Or perhaps that time at Caesarea Philippi. We talked about that just recently, I believe. Jesus is walking through that little valley. Each side are idols everywhere. And Jesus says, "Well, who do men say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" And Peter steps up and says, "You are the Son. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." He says, "Flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. My Father revealed that to you." A statement of faith. They had prepared themselves by believing in him. It's the same way today. If you prepare yourself for a place that he'll prepare for you, you have to believe. But they did something else also, and that is they followed him. He said, "Follow me." He walks on the Sea of Galilee. He's putting together his team. Who's going to work for him? Who's going to be part of what he's doing? Who's going to go the direction that he is going? He calls them to the boats and says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." You see the tax collector at his table. He says, "Follow me," and the tax collector gets up and leaves his table, and he follows him. All those that he speaks to on that day, when he says, "I go prepare a place for your people," who had not only believed, but they had followed him. There's something to remember about that. When he calls us not just to faith, but to fellowship. The idea of discipleship, doing his work here on this earth. He He called them, you've got to believe, but you've also got to follow me. He also called them to serve. During the time of his ministry, and they were with him, he instructed them to serve. He sent them out 2 by 2 at one point. At another point, we read that they were trying to heal people, and they had struggled with the idea of healing, and he had to come along and kind of straighten that mess out. We find in that 25th chapter of Matthew, what a wonderful chapter that is. He talks about the hungry and the thirsty and the naked and those who are in prison, asking them, what did you do about this? Did you feed the hungry? Did you give them something to drink to those who are thirsty? Did you visit those who are sick? Did you visit those in prison? What did you do? Did you serve me? Did you do my work? And I think as he talks to his disciples, they weren't there yet. They had not caught hold of who he was yet, but in his mind he knew, they have followed me, they believe in me. At some point they're going to take over my character and minister to this world. And I believe he believed that. He says to them, I go and prepare a place for you. The importance of a place. We are not just going to be some wandering soul. As some religions teach, we're going to be absorbed in the great cosmos. No. There was a place prepared for those who believe. I go to prepare this place for you. If I go, I will come again to this place for you. The writer of Hebrews used Abraham as an illustration of that. He says, Abraham, who's the father of faith, who wandered in the wilderness a number of years, he was looking for a city, whose building and architect was God. He was looking for a place, going to a place. I submit to you today that you and I are going to a place prepared for us, a place where Jesus will be. It's the other thing. It's not just any place. Jesus is in that place. Heaven belongs to Jesus, created by Jesus, created for us. He is there in that place. How good a place is it going to be? It's a place good enough for the Son of God to live. How good is that? I go prepare this place for you. If I go, I will come again, he said, and receive you unto myself. Where I am, there you may be also. We find out some other things about eternal life in heaven that I think are important. In 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, he assures us that we're going to get a new body. Going to a new place is okay, but without a new body, what would heaven be like? Let me read this to you. He says, for we know that if the earthly tent, which is our home, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For indeed, in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven, inasmuch as we, having put it on, shall not be found naked. For indeed, while we are in this tent, we groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but to be clothed in order that what is spiritual may be swallowed up in life. He said, if, but he should have said when this tent is torn down. There's no one in this world who's going to get out of this world alive. And probably between now and the time that you pass away, you're going to somehow be sick with something. He says when this building is torn down that we have another house, another building. This building is from God, not made with human hands. That everything born with human hands is in the image of the earthly. It won't last. I was reminded of this just a few weeks ago. You probably know this. I may have mentioned this to you. That my cousin passed away suddenly. My cousin was 65. If you saw him, you would think, now there's a specimen for you. He was stout looking. He was a carpenter and just retired a couple of years ago. He spent his time fishing and duck hunting. In fact, on the day he died, they theorized that he had been out turkey hunting because he had decoys in his gun. And And he stepped up in his truck and closed the door, and he died. Earthly. And I thought about that, his death, and thought, I remember several years ago, my Uncle Leslie, who was his dad, one night just dropped dead of a heart attack. Evidently, my cousin Bobby had inherited that heart from his dad. And when you go to the doctor's office, what are some of the things they ask you? They ask you, well, what'd your parents die? What'd your dad die of? What'd your mom die of? I'm reminded every time I tell them, oh, mom and dad died of, that there might be some tough times ahead. Dad died of fibrosis of the lung, and mom died of cancer. They both left this earth. It was a rough trip to get out of this world. The earthly. These bodies will give out. He said we have a body not made with hands. Not made with human hands, but formed for us and given to us by God. Paul would later say, the corruptible shall put on the incorruptible. Incorruptible. The corruptible, and that's what we are now, shall put on incorruption. He says the mortal shall put on immortality. We shall be changed to be immortal, incorruptible, and then defiled. That's how we shall be in the life that is to come. What a contrast to the bodies that we have now. I've been present when a lot of people have died. I suppose it goes with the job. I don't know. I've been called out. Someone's on hospice. I go out there. We have prayer. And I suppose it's a privilege to be at the bedside of someone who's passing away. Here's my general impression of that. Usually they're dying of cancer or some other lung problem. And the last thing they see in this world, you see a hospice nurse, a minister, and maybe the family standing around. And usually, unless they really have been medicated up strong, they're in pain. They close their eyes to all this, and they open their eyes to something new and exciting. They open the door to that new house, and they think, this is more than I had ever expected. That new place. In this life, as we get older, we begin to groan. He says, we groan not because we want to be unclothed. We groan not because we want to die. I don't want to die. But we groan because we want to be clothed for our dwelling from heaven. We want to have a new body. Here a while back, I woke up one morning, and Joyce said, Peter, are you all right? I said, yeah, why not? She said, you groaned all night. You groaned all night. I said, well, it just goes with some of this. Okay. You're sure? And I thought, that's kind of the story of a lot of people. That's going to be your story. The day will come when you groan. Not because you don't want life. You want a better life. To be clothed with eternal. I take a lot of medication. The best one I learned to take is Tylenol and codeine. It makes everything better. It'll take the groan out of your life, at least for a while. In Revelations, the 21st chapter, verse 4, he says some other things about the place we're going to go. And this excites me. Verse 4 says, and he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall no longer be any death. There shall no longer be any mourning or crying or pain. Then he says, the first things have passed away. The first things have passed away. What's he mean by that? If I think about the life I'm used to living, the first thing, what do I know about life? From the time I was little, by the time I was born, I surgery when I was 5. I've fallen on the concrete, busted my face up at one time. I've done a lot of really cool things. That's the first things. I got older, I discovered death. Great-grandparents started to die. Grandparents started to die. And lo and behold, friends started to die. Classmates started to die. I know about those things. Those are just the first things. The first things. He says here that those first things have passed away. You know, I don't think that one day when I open the doors to heaven, I walk in, I'm going to say, well, where's the crying? And where's the mourning? I miss those things. I don't miss those things. They're the old life. The new life has a whole new set of things. There's no more tears. There's no more loneliness. There's no more grief or pain. The old things and the first things have just passed away. Everything has become new. I have a new life. I think that ought to excite us. He will make all things new. Joyce and I like to leave town now and then, and we used to worry about try to pack everything. If we pack everything, she'd make these long lists and go down this list. Did we get a toothbrush? Did we get this and that? We check that list off. But as we've gotten older, and maybe a little more money, the kids are gone, and I lose more money. She says, you know what, if I didn't pack it, I'll just buy it. If I didn't pack it, I'll just buy it. And I thought, I can't think of anything I have on this earth that I would have better than heaven. I'll just buy it when I get there. I don't need this or that or that. I'm going to buy it when I get there. Nothing I have on this earth is fit for the place I'm going to go. Nothing's going to fit. My experiences, I don't need to remember. I don't need to remember even my relationships, really. All things will be new. A prepared place for prepared people. He says, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many places where not so. I tell you so. I go to prepare a place for you. A prepared place for prepared people. Prepare ourselves through faith and believing He is God's Son, that He died for us on the cross, and He was resurrected from the dead. We prepare ourselves by following Him. He has something for you to do. He has a direction He wants you to go. You're not in the boat today, but He calls you from your boat. He says, come and follow me. I will make you fishers of men. And through service. We represent Christ in this world. He says to me, you know, David, serve me. There are the naked, there are the thirsty, there are the hungry, there are those in prison, there are those in the hospital. Serve me. Represent me in this world. Prepare yourself for what I have for you in the future. What you're going to find out is that when you get home, it'll be better than you thought. Father, we thank you for your precious promises to us that oftentimes give us courage to go on to face another day. We know that the first things of this world are not for always. That the crying, the grief, the pain, the suffering, those are passing things. They will not survive long in this world. Once we're gone, we'll go to a better place. But these things don't exist. Lord, help us to have faith. Help us to follow you and help us to serve you in preparation for that prepared place that you have for us. Make us willing to share with those who need Christ. They might also experience the